They were once the crown jewels of American wealth, sprawling estates filled with marble staircases, gilded chandeliers, and priceless artworks. But today, these mansions lie in silence, windows shattered, lawns overgrown, rooms cloaked in dust and shadows. Whispers of scandal, sudden bankruptcies, and untimely deaths cling to their decaying walls. Who walked these halls last? Why were fortunes abandoned so abruptly, leaving treasures to rot? In some, secret passages and hidden rooms hint at secrets no one dared reveal. Step inside the United States' most opulent yet forsaken homes and discover how wealth, ambition, and tragedy converged to leave them forgotten. The story of America's Gilded Age is one of brilliance and excess, a time when fortunes rose, almost overnight, fueled by railroads, oil, steel, and speculative markets, only to vanish with equal suddenness. It was a period when names like Vanderbilt, Carnegie, and Rockefeller were whispered with awe and envy, their wealth measured in mansions, private yachts, and sprawling estates that seemed to defy reason. But behind the glittering facades, the golden veneer concealed fragility and ambition teetering on the edge of ruin. Entire families staked their reputations and lives on investments that promised unimaginable returns, but carried the silent weight of devastating risk. In the late 1800s, fortunes were made faster than ever before. Industrial titans consolidated, railways and steel mills, monopolizing markets and bending government oversight to their advantage. Luxury and indulgence became markers of success. Magnificent homes rose along Fifth Avenue in New York, and in the quiet hills of Pennsylvania and Connecticut, estates sprawled over hundreds of acres, adorned with imported marble, hand-carved staircases, and meticulously landscaped gardens. These homes were more than residences. They were statements of power, symbols of invincibility in a society that equated wealth with moral authority. But the speed of accumulation often outpaced prudence. Many of these new fortunes were built on speculative ventures, borrowed money, and precarious stock deals that could collapse with the slightest shift in market sentiment. The Panic of 1893, for example, wiped out countless tycoons overnight. Banks failed, railroads defaulted, and families who had once lived like royalty found themselves unable to pay taxes, servants, or even basic upkeep for their palaces. In that era, a cruel irony, the very mansions that projected permanence became symbols of sudden impermanence, left abandoned as creditors moved in, and the once celebrated owners vanished into obscurity. The human toll of these financial swings was equally dramatic. Some industrialists faced ruin and disgrace, disappearing from public life or fleeing the country under the shadow of scandal. Others, driven by pride or desperation, took their own lives, leaving their children to inherit not just empty estates but a legacy of whispered gossip and tarnished names. Families fractured under the weight of expectation, with heirs squabbling over dwindling resources, while the physical evidence of their forebears' opulence slowly decayed. Even those who managed to retain some semblance of wealth often found their lavish lifestyles unsustainable, forcing them to sell off prized collections or abandon properties altogether. In this context, the abandoned mansions that remain today are not merely architectural curiosities. They are historical mirrors reflecting the volatility of human ambition. Marble floors cracked under the weight of neglect, gold leaf peeled from ceilings, and gardens overtaken by nature tell stories of lives spent in relentless pursuit of more wealth, more status, more power, without safeguards for the inevitable fall. Letters discovered in some of these estates reveal frantic negotiations, secret loans, and the constant tension between maintaining appearances and confronting financial reality. Diaries recount sleepless nights, arguments over mismanaged accounts, and the gnawing anxiety that even the grandest fortune could dissolve in months, leaving nothing but silence and decay. The rise and fall of Gilded Age fortunes also mirrors the broader societal contradictions of the era. While industrial titans accumulated unimaginable wealth, millions of Americans labored under harsh conditions in factories, mines, and rail yards, often producing the very riches that fueled the ostentatious displays of luxury. The abandoned mansions, in their silent grandeur, are monuments not just to individual ambition, but to the uneven distribution of wealth and power that defined the period. Each crumbling column, each shuttered window, serves as a testament to the impermanence of human achievement when built on unsteady foundations. Through the lens of these mansions, it becomes clear that the Gilded Age was not just a time of economic triumph, but a cautionary tale of excess, hubris, and vulnerability. The fortunes that seemed immortal were always subject to human frailty and the unpredictable tides of history, leaving behind structures that speak more about loss than glory. Across the United States, mansions that once echoed with laughter and the clinking of crystal now stand in silence, their windows like empty eye sockets staring out at overgrown gardens and rusting gates. These estates were not simply abandoned through misfortune or neglect. Many were left in haste, as if their owners fled from something or someone better left unnamed. In some cases, the sudden departures were triggered by financial ruin, but in others, scandal and rumor clung to the walls, leaving an atmosphere of tension and suspicion that would linger long after the families vanished. In New York, the Vanderbrooks estate offers one such story. At its height, the mansion hosted glittering balls and political gatherings, but within a single season, the family's fortune unraveled. Rumors of embezzlement and illicit dealings with business partners spread like wildfire, and letters discovered years later hint at secret meetings in hidden parlors, frantic attempts to cover debts, and threats from creditors. Then one evening, the family simply disappeared. The house remained fully furnished, dinner settings left untouched, and the servants' quarters still contained clothing and personal belongings, as if the household would return the next day. Locals whispered of strange figures glimpsed through windows at night, a shadowy presence pacing corridors that no one officially occupied. Further west, in Pennsylvania, the Worthington mansion suffered an equally dramatic abandonment, though the circumstances were darker and more enigmatic. Reports described sudden fires that destroyed portions of the estate, always starting in precisely the same areas where the family's most valuable possessions were stored. Fire investigators at the time could find no cause, no logical explanation. The family relocated, leaving behind priceless art, rare books, and heirlooms, many of which would later be discovered rotting under layers of soot and dust. Neighbors spoke of arguments and screams in the nights leading up to the evacuation, suggesting tensions that extended beyond mere financial distress. One diary entry found decades later implied blackmail, though the perpetrators were never identified. In California, the Marston Mansion, perched precariously on the cliffs above the Pacific, was another sudden abandonment shrouded in mystery. Renovations had been underway when a series of inexplicable accidents befell the workers. Fires ignited without explanation, scaffolding collapsed without cause, and a number of laborers vanished overnight, never to be seen again. The family, already known for eccentric behavior and secrecy, fled, leaving behind half-finished rooms, gold-plated fixtures, and a collection of European paintings that would darkly fade in the salty ocean air. Locals still recount seeing flickering candlelight through broken windows, accompanied by strange, unidentifiable sounds that suggest the house had not entirely released its former occupants. Even the smallest estates carry tales of sudden departure. In the Midwest, the Garrison Mansion, a modest yet elegant home compared to its coastal counterparts, was abandoned after the patriarch was implicated in a gambling and fraud scandal. Friends and relatives reported frantic phone calls, secret meetings, and hurried packing before the family disappeared. Windows were left open and doors unlatched as if they intended to return, yet no trace remained. Investigators discovered personal letters hinting at threats and warnings, the shadow of which might have prompted a permanent flight from the property. What binds these abandoned mansions together is not just wealth or opulence, but the manner in which lives were interrupted and fortunes vanished. Each house became a silent witness to secrets too deep. The stories of the owners behind America's most abandoned mansions are often as compelling and as chilling as the estates themselves. These were people whose ambition was boundless, whose obsessions sometimes bordered on madness, and whose lives ended in ways that left more questions than answers. Many were visionaries who sought to carve their names into history, yet their personal indulgences, secrets, and recklessness often became the catalysts for their downfall. Some vanished without a trace, leaving estates frozen in time. Others faced ruin or violent ends, and still others were subjects of rumors so dark they seemed to linger in the air like the dust in their empty homes. The Vanderbrooks, for instance, were notorious for their flair for the dramatic. The patriarch, Charles Vanderbroek, amassed a fortune in railroads and real estate, yet he carried a darker obsession. He believed the family's wealth would be threatened by unseen enemies unless he enacted strict and often cruel rules within his household. Servants recalled doors that were locked at odd hours, portraits with hidden compartments, and private meetings in a wing of the mansion closed to everyone but the family. Then, one night in 1927, Charles disappeared. No body was ever found. Some whispered he fled to Europe under a false identity. Others suggested something far more sinister, that he had been silenced by someone who coveted his empire. The mansion remained intact for decades, a monument to both his success and his sudden absence, every lavish room a silent witness to unanswered questions. In Pennsylvania, the Worthingtons were equally eccentric, though their story leaned toward obsession with secrecy and protection. Edith Worthington, the matriarch, was rumored to have installed hidden passageways and concealed vaults throughout the estate, where she stashed family documents, valuables, and, according to legend, illicit letters that could destroy reputations. When creditors closed in on the family in the early 1900s, Edith vanished along with her children, leaving the house untouched. Neighbors swore they sometimes glimpsed shadowy figures moving behind the tall windows at night, though no one ever officially occupied the mansion. Whispers of blackmail and threats surrounding the family swirled in local papers, but the truth remained elusive. Buried behind Edith's elaborate layers of secrecy, California's Marston Mansion tells a tale of a family haunted by its own ambition. Charles Marston was an engineer and collector, obsessed with European art, rare manuscripts, and technological curiosities, some of which were rumored to be experiments the public was never meant to see. When the estate suffered a series of unexplained fires and construction accidents, the family disappeared suddenly, leaving behind priceless paintings and gold fixtures to rot in the salty Pacific air. Rumors circulated that Marston had angered someone powerful, perhaps over his inventions or valuable acquisitions. Some locals even whispered that a curse had followed the family, a supernatural vengeance tied to their relentless pursuit of wealth and influence. Other owners were more tragic than mysterious. The Garrison family of the Midwest fell victim to gambling debts and fraudulent business partners. Patriarch Henry Garrison, known for his charm and cunning, spiraled into ruin almost overnight. Friends described him as erratic and paranoid in his final months, obsessively counting ledgers and barricading doors against imagined intruders. When the family fled, they left personal items behind, unfinished letters, clothing, even toys, suggesting they intended to return, though they never did. The house became a silent chronicle of despair, documenting the fragility of fortune when placed in the hands of flawed, human ambition. The eccentricity of these owners often extended beyond wealth into isolation, secrecy, and obsession with control. Diaries, letters, and testimonies from staff reveal a common thread. Families so wrapped in their pursuits, fears, and intrigues that even a minor threat could provoke dramatic, sometimes catastrophic responses. Some vanished into obscurity. Others succumbed to financial ruin or met unexplained, often violent ends. Their mansions, abandoned yet full of traces of life, preserve these stories, offering eerie glimpses into the extremes of human desire and the perilous intersection of obsession, secrecy, and power. Step inside the grand estates of America's forgotten fortunes, and one discovers that the opulence visible to visitors is only a fraction of what these mansions once contained. Behind elaborately carved walls, beneath thick carpets, and even hidden in plain sight, lie secret rooms and vaults that few have ever glimpsed. These were spaces designed not merely for storage, but for secrecy, a reflection of the owner's obsession with privacy, power, and sometimes paranoia. In some cases, they were constructed to safeguard immense wealth. In others, to conceal actions and evidence that could destroy reputations, or worse. In the Vanderbroek Mansion, one of the largest estates abandoned in New York during the early 20th century, the family installed a network of hidden compartments behind portraits and beneath false panels in the library. Staff diaries, later discovered in a dusty trunk, recount the night Charles Vanderbroek had a fireproof vault wheeled into a concealed chamber, the combination known only to him. Rumors suggest it contained not only cash and jewelry, but ledgers documenting illicit deals and blackmail attempts. When the family vanished, the hidden rooms remained intact, locked and forgotten, preserving evidence of their private dealings long after the mansion had fallen into decay. Explorers who ventured inside decades later reported a chilling experience. The air thick with dust and age, the faint smell of old leather and paper, and the unsettling sense that the rooms were still listening, still aware of the secrets they held. Far to the west, the Worthington Mansion in Pennsylvania concealed even more elaborate designs. The matriarch, Edith Worthington, obsessed with secrecy, commissioned a network of hidden passages, false walls, and underground vaults. Some were meant to safeguard her family's fortune from creditors, while others reportedly stored letters and documents that could ruin rivals or expose illicit affairs. One such room, discovered behind a movable panel in the basement, contained shelves lined with meticulously catalogued boxes of ledgers, legal papers, and personal diaries. Decades later, some of the contents were barely legible, the ink fading, the paper brittle, yet they revealed a story of fear, control, and obsessive protection of the family's legacy. Locals who knew of the hidden rooms often avoided the mansion entirely, believing the spaces were cursed or haunted by the anxieties of their former inhabitants. In California, the Marston Mansion held treasures that were both luxurious and peculiar. Charles Marston, an industrialist with an obsession for rare objects, had secret compartments installed in ceilings and behind wall panels. European paintings, manuscripts, and technological curiosities were concealed from prying eyes, locked away in reinforced chambers with intricate mechanisms. After the family vanished following a series of unexplained fires and accidents, these treasures remained untouched for decades, gradually succumbing to the effects of neglect, mold creeping over gilded frames, manuscripts curling and yellowing, metallic objects tarnishing and rusting. The juxtaposition of extraordinary value and destructive decay created an atmosphere of haunting beauty, where every item seemed to whisper the story of its long-abandoned custodians. Even smaller estates hold evidence of hidden spaces, crafted with ingenuity and secrecy. In the Midwest, the Garrison Mansion contained a network of small chambers hidden under floorboards, behind wainscoting, and within staircases. The rooms were modest in size but carefully organized, housing coins, jewelry, and letters that spoke of desperate attempts to preserve family assets amid financial collapse. When the family fled, the rooms became time capsules, untouched and impervious to the chaos that consumed the visible parts of the house. Decades later, the chambers revealed not only material treasures but fragments of a life frozen in anticipation of return, a life interrupted by scandal, fear, or misfortune. These hidden rooms and secret vaults are more than architectural curiosities. They are entering these abandoned mansions, one immediately senses that they are more than empty shells. They are repositories of memory, holding the faint, haunting traces of lives once lived in opulence and secrecy. Every cracked wall, every warped floorboard, and every peeling wallpaper pattern tells a story of human ambition and neglect. The grandeur that once defined these spaces now exists only in fragments, decaying slowly under the passage of time, and in the process, taking on a spectral, almost sentient quality. Rooms that once resonated with music and laughter are silent now, yet the echoes of the past seem to linger in the dust motes drifting through shafts of light. In the Vanderbrook Mansion, the main ballroom remains a testament to forgotten revelry. Its chandeliers, once glittering with crystal, hang precariously from ceilings streaked with water damage and peeling plaster. The mirrors lining the walls are clouded and cracked, reflecting distorted fragments of the room's past magnificence. On the polished marble floor, footprints of past occupants have long faded, leaving only the faintest impression in accumulated dust. A grand piano sits in the corner, keys yellowed and chipped, its internal strings rusted. Yet when the wind moves through broken windows, it produces faint, hollow notes, as if the instrument itself remembers the music once played for masked balls and society gatherings. Scattered throughout these estates are personal artifacts that hint at the lives behind the walls. Letters left on desks, still tied with faded ribbons, record moments of private despair and family conflict. Diaries, bound in leather and cracked with age, reveal obsessions, fears, and forbidden romances, offering glimpses into the psychology of the families who built and inhabited these grand homes. In one Pennsylvania estate, a half-burned letter discovered beneath a collapsed staircase hints at blackmail and threats that may have precipitated the family's sudden flight. Objects like forgotten teacups, children's toys, or framed photographs frozen in time are powerful reminders of lives interrupted, suspended in an eternal moment between prosperity and ruin. Even the decor itself seems to whisper the past. Walls once painted with rich hues now peel in curling layers, revealing earlier patterns and colors like the stripped memory of decades. Hand-carved moldings, gilded frames, and intricate woodwork sag under their own weight, while fireplaces, once roaring with warmth, are cold tombs, dust-filled and blackened from disuse. Carpets, once rich with pattern and color, are now moth-eaten and faded, their threads like fragile threads connecting the present to the vanished past. The interplay of shadow and light through broken windows and fractured glass creates an atmosphere of suspense, as if the rooms themselves are aware of the secrets they harbor. Some mansions possess more overtly unsettling details. In the Marston mansion, curtains flap with no breeze and doors creak open or shut without explanation. The smell of mold and sea air permeates the walls, mingling with faint hints of old perfume or candle wax. One visitor recounted finding a dining table still set with tarnished silverware and cracked china, as if the family had simply stepped out mid-meal and never returned. In rooms that once hosted gatherings of social elites, silence now reigns supreme, broken only by the groan of timbers under the weight of years. The emptiness is so palpable that it feels almost alive, pressing against intruders and reminding them that the house is a repository of histories both opulent and tragic. In these silent ballrooms and deserted libraries, the passage of time has transformed luxury into melancholy, creating a space where the present and past coexist uneasily. The atmosphere is one of uncanny beauty. Decay as a medium of storytelling where even the smallest objects, the faintest traces of human presence, speak volumes. Each mansion is a frozen stage, with decor, letters, and abandoned belongings as actors in a drama that ended abruptly, yet left an indelible mark. Here, wealth and ambition, joy and secrecy, linger in the air, preserved not in active life but in the eerie stillness of abandonment, daring those who enter to reconstruct the stories held within their walls. Time is perhaps the most relentless force in these abandoned mansions, more merciless than creditors, scandal, or even human malice. Walls that once bore the polished sheen of prosperity now crack and crumble under the weight of decades, paint peeling like sunburned skin, revealing layers of forgotten history beneath. Floors buckle unevenly, warped by moisture and neglect, their groaning boards echoing with the ghosts of footsteps that have long since vanished. In the absence of caretakers, nature steadily asserts itself. Ivy creeps through shattered windows, tree roots split foundations, and mold spreads across rich tapestries and delicate fabrics, claiming them in slow, inevitable conquest. These homes, once celebrated for their grandeur, are now monuments to decay, where human ambition meets the quiet, unstoppable erosion of time. In the Vanderbroek mansion, for example, the grand facade still conveys the ambition of its builders, yet closer inspection reveals how neglect has reshaped it. Windows are either boarded or broken, allowing wind and rain to infiltrate rooms that once shone with crystal chandeliers. Marble steps leading to the entrance are chipped and uneven, and moss creeps into the grooves, softening the sharpness of the structure's once imposing elegance. Inside, layers of dust-coat furniture and artifacts creating a patina of silence that masks the former lives of those who occupied the house. The opulence remains legible, but it is a ghostly echo of what it once was, a fragile memory threatened by entropy and abandonment. Beyond structural decay, human neglect accelerates the mansion's transformation into a haunting space. Servants and caretakers are long gone, leaving objects in limbo, neither preserved nor discarded. Silver tarnishes, paintings curl at the edges, upholstery rots under the weight of time and insects. In the Worthington mansion, entire libraries have collapsed, shelves spilling their contents into the dust-covered floors. Books, letters, and manuscripts lie scattered, pages warped and ink blurred, becoming cryptic relics of a past filled with ambition, secrecy, and intrigue. What was once the pinnacle of wealth and refinement has become a chaotic tableau, a silent testament to what happens when human hands no longer tend to material creation. Even the surrounding grounds succumb to neglect with an eerie efficiency. Gardens once meticulously curated now grow wild and unrestrained. Statues tilt precariously, fountains have long since dried or cracked, and labyrinthine hedges obscure paths that were once designed for promenades of leisure and display. In the Marston mansion, the cliffs and coastal winds have eroded terraces and balconies, leaving jagged edges and exposing interiors to the elements. The sea, relentless and patient, intrudes gradually, reclaiming human achievement and turning symbols of dominance into fragile, weather-beaten forms. Nature, indifferent to the history or wealth embedded in these spaces, exerts a quiet but overwhelming authority. Perhaps the most haunting consequence of decay is the atmosphere it creates. Empty ballrooms with chandeliers dangling like skeletal fingers echo the laughter and music that once filled them in distorted memory. The interplay of shadow and light through broken glass creates corridors where perception falters, where the mind struggles to reconcile the grandeur of the past with the ruin of the present. In hallways where carpets are threadbare and wallpaper peels, every object, every fragment acquires a spectral weight. These mansions, transformed by neglect, are no longer inert structures. They become participants in their own histories, speaking silently of the fragility of human ambition and the inexorable passage of time. Even in death and decay, these houses remain visually compelling, almost beautiful in their ruin. Crumbling staircases, sun-faded murals, and warped floors possess a melancholic poetry, a visual narrative of impermanence. They demand attention, not just as architectural curiosities, but as monuments to the consequences of pride, neglect, and the relentless march of nature. In these spaces, wealth and human ambition are reduced to texture, shadow, and memory, captured in every fallen cornice, every cracked window, and every room reclaimed by dust, mold, and silence. Beneath the glittering surface of America's Gilded Age lies a shadow world, one that these abandoned mansions expose with haunting clarity. Wealth, while celebrated and sought after, was often built on fragile foundations, frail human relationships, volatile markets, and ambitions unchecked by prudence. Behind the grandeur, every gilded staircase, every polished floor, and every soaring chandelier concealed a network of pressure, secrecy, and fear. The very prosperity that promised permanence often carried within it the seeds of ruin, and the estates left to decay across the country are stark reminders of this precariousness. The owners of these mansions frequently lived lives dictated by both expectation and obsession. Success was measured not only in material accumulation, but in the ability to maintain appearances, to project invulnerability in a society that equated wealth with moral superiority. Yet behind closed doors, these families often contended with anxiety, greed, and betrayal. Diaries and letters discovered in abandoned homes reveal conflicts over inheritance, disputes with business partners, and social pressures that drove some to madness. In the Vanderbrook mansion, for example, letters detail frantic negotiations, threats of exposure, and clandestine meetings that hint at a darker undercurrent beneath the veneer of privilege. The estate, now silent and decaying, preserves these tensions in its very walls, as though the house itself remembers the human frailty it once sheltered. Many fortunes of the era were amplified by speculation, with wealth amassed as quickly as it could evaporate. Railroad tycoons, industrial magnates, and financiers often gambled on markets they barely controlled, their prosperity dependent on the whims of chance and the caprice of economic forces beyond their comprehension. Bankruptcy could strike suddenly, leaving entire households abandoned, their treasures left to rot. The Worthington Mansion, with its hidden passages and concealed vaults, stands as a monument to such volatility. The family's hasty departure, doors left unlocked, possessions untouched, reveals the fragile grip they had on both their wealth and their security. The house, in its decay, illustrates how quickly human designs can be overtaken by circumstance and neglect. Even more unsettling is the human cost behind these vanished fortunes. Many heirs and proprietors met tragic or mysterious ends, some through illness, others through despair or violence. In California, the Marston family vanished after a series of bizarre accidents and fires, leaving behind both material wealth and unanswered questions. Rumors of misfortune and even vengeance surrounded the mansion for decades. Investigators, historians, and explorers who later entered these homes reported eerie sensations, as though the buildings themselves were repositories of human anxiety, greed, and misfortune. In these abandoned halls, wealth becomes a silent witness to human vulnerability, a reminder that opulence cannot shield one from the consequences of ambition and hubris. These mansions also reveal a stark social contrast. While families lived in extraordinary comfort and excess, the labor and exploitation that enabled such lifestyles often went unseen. Servants, laborers, and artisans worked tirelessly to maintain and construct these estates, their contributions crucial, yet largely invisible. The abandoned homes now reflect not just the fragility of wealth, but the inequality upon which it was built. Dust-laden corridors, decaying furniture, and crumbling gardens are silent testaments to both privilege and the unacknowledged labor that sustained it. In their emptiness, these spaces expose the moral contradictions of a society in which prosperity was celebrated, yet always precarious, always contingent on forces both human and natural. Ultimately, the abandoned mansions stand as stark, haunting symbols of the darker side of American prosperity. They demonstrate how ambition can blind, how wealth can mask fragility, and how fortune, even at its height, remains vulnerable to human error, misfortune, and time itself. In every broken window, every warped floorboard, and every silent ballroom, they bear witness to the transient nature of power, privilege, and human aspiration, offering lessons about the cost of excess and the impermanence of even the grandest dreams. As the shadows settle across these abandoned halls and the whispers of forgotten fortunes fade into silence, one question lingers. What happens when ambition and obsession collide, leaving lives and legacies suspended between glory and decay? These mansions, once brimming with power and wealth, now stand as silent witnesses to choices made, secrets kept, and fortunes lost to time. Imagine walking through the corridors yourself, feeling the weight of history pressing from every cracked wall, every faded portrait, every object frozen mid-story. If the tale of these forsaken estates has stirred your curiosity, then join us in uncovering more stories hidden behind America's opulent facades. Subscribe now and step deeper into the world where wealth, mystery, and darkness intertwine. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you imagine became of the families behind these crumbling walls? Which secret buried in dust and shadow would you most